This is nothing but that sports talk.
Yeah, the New York Giants got smoked last weekend. As I welcome to this episode, nothing but that sports talk. Rafique Louison, alongside a brand new special guest, joining for the first time. He covers the New York Liberty. Apparently he's a former football player from Marist. Geoff Magliocchetti, welcome to the show.
Rafique, good to be here. Go Red Foxes. Thanks for the shout out.
Yeah, I had to make sure I shout you out first and get everything started. But yeah, we'll get to the Jets and Giants. We'll get to excuse me. We'll get to your coverage of the New York Jets and the Giants blowout loss last week later in the show. But right now, sure. I mean, obviously, as you know, like literally recently, the Liberty shocked the free agency landscape when they picked up Jonquel Jones in a trade. I was watching the press conference virtually. You was at the press conference. I want to get your thoughts on how the trade went about and being able to talk to her for the first time or one of the first few times.
Yeah, for sure. What an exciting time it's been over in New York right now, especially in Brooklyn with the Nets, of course, on doing their business, and the Liberty, of course, on theirs. So what's interesting about this trade, to me anyway, it shows that the Liberty have basically lost patience in the best way possible, because it's not so long ago you and I were on so many Zooms after so many losses during the Bradenton bubble saga back in 2020 when they appropriately, I guess, went 2-20 with a plethora of rookies. And after they received the number one pick in the 2021 draft, winning that lottery, of course.
They did that trade. Yeah,
yes,
after that they did that trade. I mean, obviously we didn't really, but at least they managed to get back Rebecca Allen and Natasha Howard to return. I mean, sorry to cut you off. But at least they got Natasha Howard and Sammy Whitcomb in return for that draft pick. After that, they made the playoffs by scenario. It wasn't like because it wasn't like they were good enough to get in. First of all, we would not have been in that situation if the Sparks and the Minnesota Lynx. Well, if the Sparks have one in Texas. Or if the Phoenix Mercury didn't lose to the Minnesota Lynx. They put up a much better effort than they thought. That loss with Sammy Whitcomb messed up everything after Benign Talay tied the game up. That was ridiculous. Oh yeah, and it goes last season where
I think Sammy Whitcomb's contributions to the franchise shouldn't be forgotten. She, of course, is a free agent, so time will tell.
Forget that.
But the thing is with the Liberty, they did get what I was saying basically is that their roster currently as constructed was good enough to get to the playoff spot, and they made improvements this time around, improving their win total by 4, making it to the 7th seed, one up a little bit, and at the same time, this was a roster that was good enough to get into the playoffs and maybe make some noise, almost pull up some upset talk like they did against the Chicago Sky. But the thing was that enough to compete for the top 4, to get into the top spots, to compete with the Vegases and the Chicagos and even the Connecticuts and whatnot? And the Seattles too. How could we forget them? And the Minnesotas too. But then again, we'll be here all day if I mention all of them. But at the same time, I think this was good for the Liberty, because this was a move that said we're done with mere getting into the playoffs. We actually want to make some noise now, and the time was right to do exactly that. Because you have to think about it. Sabrina Ionescu's going to be entering what's going to be her 3rd full-time season. Of course, the 2020 campaign, mostly wiped out by an ankle injury sustained in her 3rd game. And the Liberty want to surround Sabrina with legitimate WNBA talents. And it's an unfortunate part of this business that we see so many names well deserving of championship consideration. Like Beck Allen was here for just so many calamities that so many other franchises had, that it's a death sentence for so many other franchises. Normally, disassociation from quote unquote NBA brother and the Knicks, moving up to Westchester County Center. I mean, that's what happened to the Houston Comets, as a matter of fact, going over to Reliant Arena after a while. So, and leading to their demise. And I think that it stinks to see that so many more in what Jonathan Cobb has called a hybrid rebuild deserved to sustain success. Like Jasmine Jones, she deserved a better fate, for example. But at the same time, with this New York Liberty group, it shows that the front office is ready to contend. They're done being the cute underdog story. They want to win, and they want to win now. So, they want to bring a title to New York because New York at its core is a basketball town. I've often argued that football is the new national pastime, but New York is the place where, the mere basketball.
Mecca basketball.
Yes, of course. The Mecca basketball, you're absolutely right. And just the places where you play pickup games are part of the culture, are part of this town. They're must-see destinations when you get to the city. So New York is a basketball town. And what better? And, it's great that the Liberty have pulled off these inspiring victories. It's great to see Ionescu has made statistical WNBA history with her triple doubles and whatnot. But now they want to contend for a title. They want to get there with Sabrina Ionescu entering the quote unquote prime of her career, that third season onward. So she's got 2 seasons under her belt, and now it's time for her to take that next step. And adding a name like Jonquel Jones, filled with so much talent, so much history packed into her career, it's really a sign that this team is ready to take the next step. And you know what? They might not even be done.
They're not done yet. And well, to summarize everything you just mentioned, I mean, to finish my point, yeah, they literally had us thinking they were going to upset the Chicago Sky. They're going to do what the 2021 Chicago Sky did the previous season, where they went all the way to the finals and won it as a 6th seed, not even a game above 500. But then they got the smoke in games 2 and, well, obviously you were there when they got smoked to the Barclays Center after Liberty put up a strong effort. They got smoked to the last minute. But getting back to your point where you said that they're not done yet, Sandy Brondello and the coaching staff literally flew down to Israel to try to recruit Breanna Stewart. Even during the week when she announced at the WNBA that she demands the WNBA straighten out the charter fight situation. So, what do you think that Brittany? The Breanna Stewart would add to the New York Liberty roster that's already contention for a championship and at least a top 4 team, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think she would undoubtedly add to that, and they would make New York Liberty it would definitely put them into that penthouse. It would make them one of the top 4s, and it's great to see Jonathan, Sandy, and Ohima making their way down to Turkey to talk to Breanna and whatnot. And I think that Again, they've almost lost patience in the best way possible because there's so much good that's happened with this team over the past few years. They've reestablished their footprint in the New York area. They're back within, well, first of all, let's just celebrate the fact that they're back and playing in New York City proper and not an hour away, plus rush hour traffic over at Westchester County Center. So there's so much as good as happened with this franchise, and so many names have added to it, including the Tosh Howard, including Sammy Whitcomb, including Beck Allen, including Jasmine Jones. Unfortunately, who knows what's going to happen with Sammy Whitcomb at this point in time. She, of course, is up for free agency, but the Liberty, but at this end, I think the Liberty would love to have her back. They'd love to have that term veteran leadership in there. So I feel like what they can get with Breanna Stewart is further championship prowess and a legend of the game who's still in the prime stages of her career, because you'll surround Sabrina Ionescu with just top-notch talent beyond belief. And it's going to get to the point where anything, beyond, where if you finish out of the top 4, it's going to end up being a disappointment. But the Liberty have, they've been patient long enough. They've been playing the cute underdog story for long enough. Like, it was great to see them, put a scare into the sky, play them really, really, really well for 3 quarters over at Barclays Center. And how long was ago? Was that back in the late stages of the summer?
Back in late August.
Yeah, I know. Oh my God, so much has happened. But I think that they're tired of playing the underdog story, and it's good. And it's good to see that they're finally pushing their chips into the table and really starting to get things rolling. Because you know what, you have to make sure that this good streak keeps going. You have to make sure that you have built the fan base in New York, and now you got to make sure it stays. And there's no better way to do that than winning.
Exactly. Sandy Brondello knows how to construct championship rosters. I mean, look at what she did during the time coaching the Phoenix Mercury. I mean, she went to a championship in 2014. They were runner up in the finals in 2021. You were coaching Diane Taurasi, you see Skylar Diggins-Smith and Brittany Griner, and well, now she comes to the New York Liberty after the, I forgot who the name of the coach was during the first 2 seasons during the Wubble season.
Will Hawkins,
yeah, he left. Now it's her turn to, like, you know what? Let's just change the culture. It looked like they weren't going to make it nowhere when they started off 1-7 when they were banged up. Back to the month of June, you could tell they were serious about making the playoffs. And we every time we predict they're not going to do anything, they end up doing something.
No, I think what was interesting about that 1-7 stretch is that there were so many calamities. I mean, I recall back it was I think it was late April. They invited us over to an open practice over at Barclays Center in lieu of a preseason game, and there were like 4 or 5 players who were suited up for the team that afternoon, and two of them, AD and oh God, who was it? Lurella Kubai were gone by about July. So I think that, you can look at that 1-7 start where there were so many injuries, where there was so many players still fulfilling their overseas commitments that it was almost like a blank stretch for them. And they did win their first game. They beat Connecticut in a very exciting first game. Jocelyn Willoughby, of course, came back and unfortunately was injured. If there's one thing, I made a Black Friday shopping list for the Liberty back in November, and one of the things I asked for was for health for poor Jocelyn Willoughby, because she's done a lot off the court and has come in and at this point. So I feel that it was tough to see that 1-7 stretch, but Sandy said it so many times last season that, the first month or two of the season, they were still finding their land legs. They were still getting things back together. And you factor in that 1-7 start, so the rest of it, they go 16-20. What's that, a 15-13 record? I think that's almost where that team was going. And I think that they accomplished their goal. Like every rebuild has a sense of progression to it. Now, some rebuilds go faster than others. Look no further than in the NFL with the Cincinnati Bengals. They were 1-15. Next thing you know, they're competing for Super Bowls in back-to-back years. So I feel
that Super Bowl again this year by defeating Kansas City. So
exactly.
We'll get back to that in a minute.
Some rebuilds are faster than others, but the Liberty had a step-by-step process, and it was part of Jonathan Cobb's what he called the quote hybrid rebuild thing, and it was perfectly defined by the sense that they completed one goal in 2021, get back to the playoffs by any stretch possible. 2022 featured another checklist off that list, even if it was featured another check off that list, even if it was unspoken, in the form of hosting a playoff game. They got it and energized the crowd pretty well. Still got the tells from that occasion in here. So I think that I think that right now, again, they just lost patience in the best way possible, and now they want it. Moral victories are great. Moral victories great, but moral victories counted. Everyone would be undefeated. Everybody would have a ring. Now the Liberty actually wants some physical hardware, and that's what moves like these and the moves to come, potentially to come, I should say, really define and illustrate. And you were saying before about what Breanna Stewart could bring. You mentioned she's really interested into the charter flight plan. And I mean, look no further what the Liberty did last year. They told the NBA, the Tsai family told the NBA, the WNBA, excuse me, that they could, foot the bill for charter flights. And how did the WNBA respond? Best I could do is contraction of the franchise almost. So I feel it's really something that could really appeal to Breanna Stewart that other teams could not offer. Because say what you will about the Tsai family, they really expressed a good investment and a good devotion to what the Liberty are trying to do in their building.
Exactly. We got Ryan Walker coming on the show. Welcome aboard.
What's up, guys? How y'all doing? How y'all feeling? I just make sure the sound and everything is right.
Yeah, Ryan, Geoff Magliocchetti. This is the guy. Well, he's been on a lot of New Clippy Zoom calls. He covers the New Clippy. We were just talking about the Jonquel Jones trade that we talked about last week. They literally going all the way to Israel to recruit Breanna Stewart, and also her fight to advocate for the charter flights for the WNBA players. So yeah, there's a lot of WNBA topics to talk about. We're not even in the month of April yet. So yeah. But Ryan, I mean, I know you just said in the last episode, but the Liberty, they're trying to recruit Breanna Stewart. I mean, why don't you tell Geoff Magliocchetti what are your thoughts on the addition of Jonquel Jones, and then what would a Breanna Stewart acquisition lead to New York Liberty?
I mean, we talked about it last week. Miss Jones was such a good, just a great pickup for the Liberty. I mean, breath of fresh air. I don't even know the last time we've had a free agent acquisition of this type of nature. I mean, especially, and the first thing when we got her, the first thing I said was what I said. I said, man, she's a dog, and we don't even mean that in the bad realms. We mean like she is a pit bull, and I think we need some of that intensity I mean, she's of course ridiculously talented as well too. She can score the basketball, rebound, defend, and do so many things. But just that mentality and the winning mentality is definitely what we need to add towards the culture, towards what we have been building the last year or so with the New York Liberty. It'd be great for Sabrina, it'd be great for Brittany, Miss Laney, excuse me, and the other players that are on the team for acquisition like that. And I'm going to hear the gentleman speak again too. If they're going all the way to Israel to get Breanna Stewart, you know how I feel about Breanna Stewart already. And if Breanna comes, if she comes, I'm gonna set the bar to a whole different level on what I think the Liberty should do if that young lady is on the basketball team. So we'll knock on wood, and hopefully they buy the best food for her in Israel and say the right things so that she can come to New York and be a Liberty. And I also want to hear I think that's great strides too, more than the acquisitions, that they're actually getting the players chartered flights. Thank God.
Mm-hmm.
About time.
Right.
About time, frankly, for sure.
Yeah, they should at least, if they're not going to make NBA players money, and we all know about that whole logistics and blah blah blah, rah rah rah. At least they could be able to ride on the flight first class, and so that's extra. That's existential for me right there.
Yeah,
and it's existential for Breanna as well. And I'm sure she would appreciate the Israeli food, but you better get her something Turkish. She's playing in Turkey this year. But I think that you're absolutely right about what quote unquote Stewie would mean to the franchise. And I was telling Rafique before, I think this was just a case of the Liberty becoming impatient in the best way possible. Like, it's cute and it's fun. It's fun to be the underdog. I mean, look, we've seen so many underdogs rise throughout ranks of all sports.
Rafique, so many underdogs, like too many underdogs in all sports, not just WNBA, but in all sports.
No, for sure. Look, Rafique, you were talking about you introduced my Marist quote unquote heritage. Go Red Foxes. They made it to the Sweet 16 a couple of years back, and maybe a decade back. So just wanted to give a shout out to them. They're one of the many underdogs that have risen over the years, and we're seeing more parity in the women's game, in the lower ranks, in not the I don't want to say lower ranks by any stretch of the imagination, but in the NCAA tournament, we're seeing more upsets than ever. We're seeing more teams compete for a title. I mean, look, no one's going to beat South Carolina at this point in time, but at the same time, we are seeing some variety in there. It's not just, it's not just the same UConn, Tennessee, Notre Dame. It's not
right.
And the funny thing is, UConn and Tennessee, they play later tonight.
Who plays later tonight?
UConn and Tennessee for the women's side, they play later tonight at 7.
That's right. That's absolutely right. But it's not just the same 4 teams anymore in the things. And being an underdog is fun. It's fine. It's great. There's no greater thrill in sports. I think every Giant fan, every Jet fan can speak to that. But at the same time, at some point, it wears on you. And at some point, you want actual hardware. And that's what this move signifies. It signifies, and it took a heck of a price to do it. It took an emotional price in trading away Rebecca Allen, who was the one constant.
She was very important to the franchise.
Quite. She was on this team for 7 years. She was one.
She was playing their assistant in Charles days.
Yes, yeah. Oh my goodness, yeah. She was the one remainder from the Madison Square Garden days, and she will be missed. We cannot stress that enough. And I think, and the other one is Natasha. The other one involved was Natasha
Howard, obviously,
was who was one of the big moves in this process, bringing in both Natasha Howard and Sammy Whitcomb, as well as Benijah Laney, because the moves are improving with each increasing step. There is more prestige each time around. You build through the draft in UNESCO. You build through championship pedigree in Howard and Whitcomb. You build through rising veteran talents like Benijah Laney. You just brought in a downright historical talent. So again, the Liberty just got impatient in the best way possible. They're tired of being, that's nice, New York. You're back. You're back. Good for you. You finally found some franchise stability. Good for you. And now the Liberty got tired of it. They want currency where it really matters. Currency and prestige where it really matters. The win column.
Exactly. And I know they're tired of being the only New York team to not win a championship in any capacity. I mean, let's not forget, we're talking about the same New York Liberty team that was in the finals like 3 or 4 years in a row, something like that, or for the first 5 years of the WNBA on its own, and they couldn't even get it done against the Houston Comets, may God rest his soul, and Los Angeles Sparks during the days of Lisa Leslie. Right now, ever since then, the closest they've gotten to the NBA Finals was in 2015, where actually they had Rebecca on the roster. Tia Charles was a former MVP being traded to the Liberty from the Connecticut Sun. They were in the conference finals, losing to Tamika Catch's Indiana Fever. They should have won that series, let's be honest. But luckily, we're past that. I mean, ever since then, the Liberty have not won a playoff game up until, of course, last year. And now, I'm guaranteed they're top 4 team and at least win some playoff games. That's why I guarantee. Because you cannot shock us. I mean, geez, the Liberty, they're doing what the New York Knicks are supposed to be doing. Picking up big stars. Seriously.
Well, I just hope that that's all if they definitely get Breanna, right? If they get Breanna, then we can say this should be a guarantee, at least barring no injuries, a 1 through 4 in whatever playoff seeding wise. But this is what I will point out and say too. You do know what he's saying is true. The Liberty got very impatient, and it was like you're tired of being the side act. You should be the show now, and it's just different even though there's different parameters. It's different in the women's game to acquire certain acquisitions compared to in the NBA game. We all know that my Knicks have their own discrepancies per se, and that's a whole different conversation in time to talk about. But it's just more difficult. And then at the end of the day, when players want to win, and players also want to know that they're going to get paid too. This is just a sidetracking. This is an amazing stat. I think they said that in New York State, we all understand that New York State is a high tax bracket. Why do you think a lot of players go play in Dallas, in Texas, in Florida? Because there's no state. You know what I'm saying? There's so many different things where you're going to see more of your money. Kyrie Irving, they said, is going to make $34 million this year, right? They said by the time taxes and everything and all that different parameters come out, he makes $18 million. Now, listen, we're all thousandaires. So, I mean, boo-hoo that he's making $18 million this year, right? Stop the economy. But it just shows you how much $33 million is what you gross. But then after taxes, interest, your 401k, all that stuff clicks in, you come home with $18 million. So sometimes it was even a whole different discussion when they used to talk about Julius Randle's overpaid. Julius Randle gets paid $18 million from the Knicks. So if you take away some of those taxes, what are you coming home with? $10 million? Now, granted, it's more than what we're making as hundred and thousandaires. I get it. But that's another thing, too, that some players look at with coming to play in certain cities and states. How much money am I really going to come home with at the end of the day? And New York State takes a lot of taxes and money away from players. It's a very
expensive state to live in.
Yes, it is.
Oh, look, that's so true. It's just unfortunate that there's nothing that front offices can do anything about it because, but we go unless James Dolan wants to run for mayor or president. Well, God help us all. But
please no.
Can barely handle the Knicks. Never mind a country or town.
Correct, or even the city.
Yeah, exactly. Look, I look as a diehard New York Ranger fan. I get on my knees every morning and thank to God that James Dolan doesn't care about hockey or doesn't.
Well, that's why Glenn Sather and those guys. That's why the Rangers always keep some kind of consistent brand because he knows nothing about hockey and he does not interfere with the New York Rangers.
Yes, and the one time
that's why.
And the one time he jinxed him in 2012. John Morello on a whole new fit. So don't even get me started about that. I'm not even.
Yeah.
No, but that's
I'm a huge Ranger fans too. So trust me, that one, all this stuff stinks.
I'm a guy that doesn't watch hockey during regular season that much, but when I do watch it, it's only when the playoffs come and the Rangers are in it. When I first started watching it.
Okay, there you go. So you know. But
I've watched Rangers playoff games for years.
Yeah. I mean, hey, last year was a heck of a run. I'm looking forward to doing it again.
Oh my goodness!
I was always trying to go. There's one thing I could suggest. I always try to get to the. I can't get inside the Garden. That's way in my price range. But at the same time, that I always took in the games at a rooftop bar across the street from the Garden. Very fun, very exciting. Hope they'll be able to do it again this year. So fingers crossed there. But at the same time, the Liberty season will be going on at the same time. So what's interesting there is that you are right in the sense that first of all, I feel like it's way too early to make WNBA predictions. I keep myself to a strict schedule. I always say when I become president, again, God help us all, if I'm putting an amendment in the Constitution that says no football predictions before the Stanley Cup playoffs and the NBA finals are over, and no WNBA predictions before the women's tournament is over, or at least until after the draft. Like, come on. I know they're so close, but it's a bit early. But look, I think at the same time too, it's going to be very difficult to topple the Las Vegas Aces controversy vis-a-vis Dear Hamby notwithstanding. But at the same time, you are right. This does make the Liberty a franchise contender, and they have every right to be impatient because I've never ever. This is a bit of a hot take, and people have criticized me for it. I hate the concept of tanking. I absolutely hate it. Why should players,
I don't like it at all.
Why should players reap a reward they'll never get to sow? Or is that the other way around? I'm not exactly a farmer type.
No, I understand exactly what you're saying with that one.
And they've had to do that for a while now. More than half the team was rookies over in the Bradenton bubble. That was ridiculous. It was unbelievable. And now they're finally getting and I think it's even harder to quote tank. It's harder from both a physical and emotional toll. It's dumb in the NFL when you only have 16 opportunities, and it's dumb to do it in a league where there's only 12 teams. And of course, we've been talking about expansion from now until rapture. But at the same time, it's hard to do that when there's only 12 teams. And they have every right to be impatient. They have every right to finally hit fast forward on this. They have every right to do that. So I can't blame them in the slightest. It comes with, again, a high emotional toll and bidding farewell to a couple players, and they might not be the only ones you have to say goodbye to. So it comes with a high emotional toll, but they have well earned the opportunity to hit fast forward, to finally say, yeah, we're tired of dwelling outside the penthouse. We're trying to break in. So I give them. I think the timing was right too, because they've done this for far too long. And Ionescu's entering the prime of her career, the prime of her being a leader. And one underrated thing, speaking of expansion, you have to consider. We've talked for a while about putting a team in the Bay Area. Now, once Ionescu, hits free agency. Now, I am not saying she is disgruntled by any stretch of the imagination, New York. I do not want to start any rumor. I do not want to start any idea of it. But if and when we get a team in the Bay Area, who says she's not going to want to play closer to home? You have to make New York look as attractive to her as
possible.
And adding a downright historic talent like Jonquel Jones, it's a darn good start.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm glad they're working on getting Breanna Stewart. I mean, I wanted Breanna Stewart last year, but I guess she wanted to play with Sue Bird in her final season of the WNBA. But this time around, well, even if you do decide to go back to the Seattle Storm, who are you going back to? Jewel Lloyd? I mean, she's talented. I'll give her flowers. I mean, Seattle Storm don't really have nobody. Okay, Minnesota Lynx, that's another possible free agent destination. Fine. Her teaming up with Nafisa Collier, that's a good pick. That's a good front court duo, especially with Sylvia Fowles retired. I get that. Washington Mystics, they won the finals in 2019. You're teaming up with the likes of Maisha Hines-Allen, Natasha Cloud, and a bunch of the top players. Oh yeah, Elliot Deladon, who has some finals experience. So I get why you would pick those teams, but I'm telling you, the Liberty, you better not mess up and getting Breanna Stewart. I mean, we already talked about what would it bring to the team, so please, I hope it happens.
Give me something to write about, so I'll take it.
Yeah. All right, now on to another topic. As I mentioned, that you know what? It's something that you texted me halfway through the game last Saturday. You said it was over, and yeah, it was literally over. I mean, it's pretty much a repeat of Week 15 all over again with the Giants and the Eagles. After we barely survived the Minnesota Lynx in a 3-seed, 6-seed matchup, they went to Philadelphia and caught the smoke big time. So, what are your thoughts, Ryan? Was it more about the Giants being horrible or the Eagles just being a better team?
Well, I got to stop you now because you're throwing a lot of blasphemous words out there that we need to clear up on air. One, the Giants weren't horrible this year per se.
Let's talk
Now,
about the game itself.
well, I'm going to clear that up for you. The what happened Saturday is the Giants, who are a rebuilding team, who I told you that I would be happy if they were 7-10, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And I used to fight with you with football all the time when there used to be certain weeks. Oh, they should beat this team. The NFL is not, as much as I love NBA, as much as I love my hockey. NFL is a whole different beast. It's not necessary. I told you, it's not about who you play. It's who you play and how they're playing when you play them. You know.
Yeah.
So
I agree with you on that. I never had to argue with you saying that.
Let's just say this straight out. The Eagles are far better than 95% of teams in the NFL. The Giants were one of the only teams that, by serendipity, we have to play them twice in the division, and a playoff game played them 3 times. Some teams don't even want to step on the field with them 1 time to play that football team. But what happened last week is what was supposed to happen. The Eagles have way more talent than the New York Giants do. The Giants are a team in progression of what they were trying to do. I don't even think Brian Daboll or anybody thought they were going to the postseason this year. They weren't going to shoot for and see what we just talked about with tanking. They wasn't just going to just let the season go astray. They held everybody accountable. Guys are going to play hard. Guys are going to change the culture. That's why it was so enjoyable as a Giants fan to watch the season this week, because you knew it wasn't over by the first quarter. They were actually competing and playing hard. But there's nothing bad to think about with that game last week. The Eagles are far more better than the New York Giants are. They proved that in the Week 13 contest. Even Week 17, we played them more competitive. We had third string guys, but their goal was really to stay healthy and probably not show us as much, because they probably seen that maybe later on the line you might have to play that team again. The Eagles are really, really good. They're a phenomenal team. The Giants have nothing to be ashamed of. The Giants overachieved this year, and the offseason is going to be huge. They have a couple dollars to spend with. And on top of that, they do have some draft picks. So they got to think about a lot of things. And it's just, trust me, in the first quarter, when they didn't kick it on 4th and 8 and they missed it, I knew the game was over right then and then, because you have to play.
The exact same thing. I was going to bring it up when you were done talking, but yeah, that was not a good play for Daniel Jones. I know it worked. I mean, it wasn't a bad decision, but it was just poorly executed.
I'm going to disagree with the poor decision right there, because the Giants played exactly like they were supposed to. They played like a team with absolutely nothing to lose.
Nothing to lose. Right, exactly.
The best compliment you could give them, because no one without at least a financial stake in the Giants, be it a player, coach, or in this day and age, better, had any realistic hope that the Giants were going to win that game. And
correct.
Should be a shoo-in for Coach of the Year, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
Because
he's nominated for Coach of the Year.
Who?
Yeah, Brian Daboll, he's nominated for Coach of the Year.
He should be the front runner. He should be the front runner, because this Giants team, let's face it, the past 5
they weren't that talented. They had, if you look on the team offensively, they had really one. Saquon Barkley is a incredible talent coming off ACL surgery from 2 years ago, right? Everybody, Richie James was a kick returner, punt returner, damn near came off the street. They made him a receiver. Galladay overpaid, can't do anything for us but get a block clearly. I mean, there was so many guys on the team. You're like, this team has no business winning 9 games, and they did.
The realistic goal for the Giants and the Jets, as a matter of fact, was, I always those playoff charts. I almost call them a football version of an advent calendar. You're watching like games in November, December, and like during when they come back commercial, let's check the playoff picture, and it'll say like division leaders, wild cards, and the in the hunt column. A realistic goal for the Giants. The ceiling for the Giants this year should have been in the hunt column.
In the hunt.
And Brian Daboll, who was a brilliant hire,
phenomenal.
And not just sneaking in by the skin of that nonsense 7 seed now, because the only reason that's there is so the NFL can sell a whole bunch more Burger King commercials. And and they made it to the 6th seed and took down what is admittedly a strong Minnesota
Vikings team.
Correct.
They were really tough in close games.
And yes, you're right. Hey, look what happened to the Colts, as a matter of fact. And I think that the Giants, going for on fourth down was a strong move from the Giants there. And it was a sense that you're absolutely right. They were never going to beat Philadelphia. I think no one expected, even those pessimistic Giant fans didn't think it was going to be a 31-point game. But at the same time, it's almost somewhat expected. But the Giants have nothing to be disappointed about this season because
I mean, we're satisfied that we won a playoff game as a low seeded game.
Everything after clinching the 6th seed was a win. It's like this season for the Giants was like waking up on Christmas morning and then getting everything
you wanted.
And then the Viking game, that was like your mom's like, "Hey, what's this? It's a PlayStation." As a matter of fact, and I think with the Giants too, the fact of the matter is, from a psychological standpoint, losses are disappointing again rather than the norm, because the Giants were teetering on the verge of Cleveland/Detroit oblivion, where it was a tradition. You'd be looking, instead of the playoff picture, you'd be looking at mock drafts by Halloween. But now losses like that are actually disappointing again. So all in all, it's a win for the team. It stings in the moment, but overall, it's a win for the team.
Yeah, and even listen, I was watching it in the living room at my lady's house. The kids are there, and I'm watching it, and with me, any one of the teams in the playoffs, I can't sit down, so I'm standing up watching the game, and I'm watching things happen, and my lady's looking at me, and she's like, "Why are you not screaming at the TV? Why are you not?" I said, "Babes, because I have a realistic outlook on who we're playing and what we're doing. I know we're going to have to play a perfectly flawless football game in order to be in position to beat this football team. They're really, really, really good. And their personnel and what they have on offense and how they run their offense, as good as the Giants defense are, we're missing some of the guys to contain the San Francisco 49ers. They have guys to make it more difficult for the Philadelphia Eagles, even though that's offense. We're talking about defense. The defense of the San Francisco 49ers have guys on it to make it interesting for Philadelphia. I still have the Eagles winning that game, but we don't have the personnel on our team to do that. We just, not defensively. Remember, they run that run pass option thing with Jalen Hurts. He can go run himself. He can make placid plays. We got Boston Scott, who tears the Giants apart. We have their other running back, who's a Pro Bowler. They have two phenomenal receivers on the outside with Brown and Adam. We didn't have the guys to stop that. We just really didn't. And now offensively, we have to be phenomenal to win. The Giants were a 20-point offensive team this year. When they scored all those points against the Colts, that was like Kwanzaa. And the Colts stink. So, I mean, anybody can score 30 and change against them. And Daniel Jones was phenomenal that day, so we're not going to take away and poo-poo for it. But you're only as good as the team that you play. And that's why I told you that I would rather play Minnesota in the first round, because if they would have played anybody else, if they would have played the Niners, they go home. If they would have played the Eagles, they go home. And even if they would have played the Dallas Cowboys, believe it or not, most likely they go home. That was the best matchup for them to win in the first round. They couldn't beat Seattle, but Seattle, playoff-wise, numerically, they weren't going to be able to play Seattle. So based off who was there with that close Christmas Eve game, and you losing on a 62-yard field goal without Xavier McKinney, without oh my God! Why do I always forget my cornerback's name? It's going to come to me in a second. He was hurt. He was out for like 8 weeks. But without our key guys in our secondary, you knew you had confidence to try to win this game. But they had no chance to beat Philadelphia. That's the future. And I think the biggest thing I told Feek what they need to put on the bulletin board is you have to figure out how to break this lovely curse with Philadelphia and Dallas. The Giants are 12-1. The Eagles and the Cowboys, respectively, in the last 13 contests, are 12-1 against the Giants. You know how many years that is?
Ridiculous amount.
6 years.
6 years. 6 years, postseason stuff, and so on and so forth. They have to figure out that if they could have went 500 against those teams in the regular season, look how everything changes. But they were a rebuilding team. The future is bright. and trust me, they will be in good. And there's probably going to be some guys on the team this year that are not there next year. So we'll see.
Exactly. And you know what? Geoff Magliocchetti, when we talked about the Jonquel Jones trade to New York Liberty, you mentioned something about being tired of playing the underdog story in the best way. What do you think the New York Giants were doing all season long? They were tired of being a bad team all these years.
You're right. Like I said, they were on the verge of becoming the new Lions, the new Browns, and
yes, sir.
Even Detroit's popping back up too, as a matter of fact. But so when they came in here and Dable made it clear that things were going to be different with that win over Tennessee in week 1, that gut check win over Tennessee in week 1, that changed everything. And it set a brilliant tone for this season. You mentioned bulletin board material. I think the one thing that Brian Dable should do next season, when everyone gets to camp, there should be one picture in everyone's locker. Nick Sirianni threatening to go for 2 in a 27-0 ball game, because that was overkill. I'm sorry, that was overkill what they were doing to the Eagles. And you could spare me. Oh, the analytics say to do that. The analytics say to do that. I'm tired of being ruled by analytics. There has to be a healthy balance. It's never going to be an extremist in anything. That was pure. I don't want to curse. I don't want to curse at all. It was a pure, hey, look what we're doing. This is a rivalry thing. So the Giants absolutely need to do that. There is no bigger crapshoot in current professional sports than divisional games. And in the subsection of that, NFL divisional games, the most cutthroat division is the NFC East. Anyone can beat anybody in the NFL on any given Sunday. You've heard the trope, and that goes about 40-fold in divisional games. How many times have we? It's very, 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 very hard to beat a team twice, much less 3 times in a year. Look what happened to the 07-08 Dallas Cowboys en route to the Super Bowl.
Correct.
But the Giants have struck. Look, you can beat up whatever the Washington football franchise wants to call itself. You could beat up on them no matter what. You could beat up on the Commanders from now till rapture. Good for you. Until the Commanders show any sign of forming a somewhat competent NFL franchise, that's not going to impress anybody. If we were seeding the NFL teams based on the college football, like they do with the college football playoff, the Giants would be one of those group of 5 teams, a Central Florida or a Tulane type in there, a nice little underdog story. So you're absolutely right, Rafique, in the sense that the Giants were the underdogs for a little bit and this season, and they played. I give them credit. They played like a team that had absolutely nothing to lose. I give credit to the Jacksonville Jaguars for doing the same. So they played like a team with nothing to lose. Like very 2017 Yankees-esque, where they were able to afford what was basically a throwaway trip to the playoffs and played with a sense of what I like to call healthy, reckless abandon. And they did it too with so many calamities happening. You mentioned their injuries in the secondary, their highly touted first-round pick, Kadarius Toney, is now out in Kansas City right now. So many things should have gone wrong for this franchise. And their top receiving targets were guys like for a few weeks were guys like Bellinger and David Stills,
Richie James.
And can I just say it's very weird to see someone else wear 80 in the post-Victor Cruz era? That's very
weird. Yes, absolutely. But you know it's so and I talk about this all the time with Rafique, and I don't want to sound bitter, and I don't want to go there because I went to college for 4 years in Pennsylvania. So 15 minutes out, 20 minutes outside of Philly, and so on and so forth. So I got to see Philly fans up close and personal, and get to see the mental mind state. Let me tell you something about Philadelphia. That is some of the most arrogant blue-collar guys that I've ever come across in my life in every freaking sport. And now that I have my tea for Tom, I'm going to just let it out right here, right now. The Sixers haven't won since 1983. And when the Sixers won in 1983, just in case Philadelphia didn't know, they had a guy from Long Island named Julius Erving that helped them win the championship in 1983. Mm-hmm. So we're going to leave that one right there. And I'm still waiting for the process to work.
They were in the finals against Kobe Bryant's Lakers, even though Allen Iverson.
Yeah, that was 2001. That's nice. The Knicks went to the finals in '99. That's nice.
Kobe Bryant's Lakers. And the funny thing we're talking about is that it's cute. Really a 3-year anniversary of his passing, but we'll get back to that later. But get back
They got blasted in that finals, and the only thing that Philadelphia can remember from that is Iverson
was Allen Iverson crossing over Tyronn Lue.
Okay.
Oh my God.
They got blasted.
can I make one request?
Yes.
Don't insult Villanova. I wouldn't exist without it because my parents met at Villanova, so no Villanova, no me.
No, we won't. But this is the professional teams, and I got no problem with Nova because Jay Wright was the coach there, and Jay Wright is from Long Island. So now, with that being said, the Phillies. My Yankees beat them in 2009. I know that in a World Series, and they had a great run this year. They weren't even, but they didn't do that there neither. And Broad Street Bullies with the Flyers. I mean, how long has it been since that team? Neither here nor there. So their biggest claim to fame is the Eagles. Now, they're most with the Eagles. I'm telling you, you can't talk about a more arrogant, jerkish, pompous fan base than the Philadelphia fan base with the Eagles. Even when they're regular, you can't tell them that they're not super because that's just Philadelphia. And I'm not mad at it. Listen, we're blue collar silly too, but so Sirianni doing that, it doesn't even rub me the wrong way because that's the style of what Philadelphia does. And when you adopt that culture of what's going on there, unfortunately, it absorbs everybody in the franchise. And I have them going to the Super Bowl. This might sound crazy. I still think that Kansas City will win, even with the injury going on with them. But if Mahomes don't look right, Cincinnati will beat them again. But I have the winner of the Super Bowl coming from the AFC. And I actually want Philadelphia to go to the Super Bowl and fall on their face there so they can come back to reality a little bit, even though they are a really good, phenomenal team, okay? But that's just how Philadelphia is. And that's why with them sometimes I thrive when the Giants can beat them or Dallas because they are so – Philadelphia's blue-collar pompous, and the Cowboys think they're supposed to win against everybody all the time. So anytime they play the Giants, it's always like, that's a guaranteed win. I'm ready to stop that. I'm ready for that to end. And it's just so ridiculous that Philadelphia, a team that finally won their first Super Bowl 5 years ago in 2018, they were always the last of the talk in the division, even if they were beating up on anybody else, because Washington, whatever you want to call them, found a way to win 2 Super Bowls. The Giants have 4 Super Bowls. The Cowboys have 5 Super Bowls. They were sitting on that donut. And listen, if Tom Brady catches the football on a swing around pass, the same thing they did with Nick Foles, and we got to remember, they beat Tom Brady, but he threw for 515 yards in that Super Bowl. So that doesn't impress me with them and their arrogance. They can have it. If they don't win the Super Bowl, then those things where you try to you have to keep your foot on somebody's throat, but there is a form of gamesmanship in sports. And that's just Philadelphia. Listen, every dog has their day, and we shall see. If they don't win the pinnacle of that, those are some of the things that they will be eating the whole entire year. You're up 27-0 to a team that you know that you're way more talented than, and you're even considering going for 2 points?
Exactly. And you know what? Yeah, and you know what? That's crazy. I mean, I'm watching the game, sitting down, and I knew Philadelphia was going to win. I mean, I was kind of low-key hoping the Giants could do what the 07-2011 version did, especially since you could beat the Minnesota Vikings. But obviously, the predictable happened. It was about to happen. A year where we win a playoff game but not win the Super Bowl. So,
but the Vikings, the defense was just.
They're not that great.
That's really the biggest thing. Yeah, they're really bad.
One thing I will give Philadelphia for credit where it's due, the Eagles, that is. I have to give the Eagles the credit, particularly to the front office and Howie Roseman, because when they won that Super Bowl, they looked like a team that was destined to be a problem for a while. And then Carson Wentz just, fell off a cliff, and they lost so many other guys on that team. But they reloaded, they restocked, they got in by the skin of their teeth last year in the mediocrity of the 7th seed. And I can't, in case you can't tell, I can't stand that they've invited the 7th seed in the playoffs because because it's just you invite the seventh best team from each conference to get there. And I know Miami put up a good fight against Buffalo. I know that the Seahawks, put up a good fight for 3 quarters against San Francisco. But you invite the seventh best team of the conference. What do you expect? And play them against a team that you have a bye. What do you expect is going to happen? But anyway,
Correct.
But I do have to give credit to Howie Roseman in the Eagles front office in the sense that they could have been left for dead. They could have faltered. And you always say it's a trope of like every playoff game ends a blow. They always pan to the losing team sideline. They cut to the guys who are like, and they say the same thing almost every time. Oh, they'll be back in no time. They'll be back in no time. But there are no guarantees in the NFL. I mean, just a few years ago, the Bears looked like world beaters. The Jaguars defense looked like it was going to be a problem for a long time. And, we see what happened there. And the Eagles looked like they were potentially set for a dynasty. But at the same time, and this is what separated them from the Dallas Cowboys, in my opinion. The Eagles needed offensive weaponry. So what they do, they went out and got themselves A.J. Brown. The Cowboys lost offensive weaponry. They lost
Gallup.
Cooper. What did they do? Nothing.
Yes.
And that came back to haunt them this year. It was a difference of playing a weekend and sitting home watching everything. So that's where the Cowboys falter. I mean, look, we could write a book about where the Cowboys went wrong. We went wrong this year.
You know what? And you know what? While we're talking about the Dallas Cowboys, they lost to the San Francisco 49ers again. I mean, it wasn't as bad as the loss at the Cowboys Stadium last year. I mean, or should I say AT&T Stadium to be exact? But they lost. I mean, forget the fact that what's his name, Ezekiel, they couldn't even stay in bounds when he made that catch.
That was Dalton Schultz.
No, Schultz, the tight end. Yes, the tight end. He didn't make any forward progression going outside to that, and then that's when the clock will not stop.
Yes, that's right.
Like 5 seconds left. I mean, the fact about it, you would even add more seconds to the clock in that last play, and then also that Prescott throw it to the left side. You're supposed to throw a lateral.
No, look. The Cowboys lost that game long before they decided to have Ezekiel Elliott line up as the center. And the thing is, for years and years, I was probably the biggest Tony Romo apologist in North Jersey, and those lawyer services transferred on to Alex Smith. I was a big fan of both of them, and Tyrod Taylor too, as a matter of fact. That's neither here nor there. I think that here's the difference between Dak Prescott and Tony Romo. Romo was always due for one big mistake at the end of the game. The problem with Prescott is he makes these little mistakes throughout the game.
Correct.
That always seem to come back to bite you. And his 2 interceptions set up, the 2 San Francisco field goals. And the fact of the matter is, Prescott is playing with a defense that is better than anything Tony Romo ever had, because Micah Parsons alone should get most valuable player consideration, but unfortunately, the MVP has turned into most popular quarterback, unfortunately. So that's neither here or there. So it's just unfortunate with Prescott, because there are teams throughout this league, cough cough, the Jets, who would kill to have the type of quarterback consistency that the Dallas Cowboys have had. If Prescott and or Romo played anywhere else, they'd be the most inspirational stories in NFL history, going from respectively undrafted and 4th round choices to commandeering one of the most prestigious franchises in all of sports. But the problem with the Cowboys is the problem with Prescott is that he does not take advantage of this good defense and makes these several little mistakes throughout the game, and goes out there and basically cost the team some major opportunities. Now, the other thing that's haunted the Cowboys, and this is true for any team for almost any team in the Jerry Jones era, they're not disciplined. We saw in last year's game in San Francisco what they take.
Well said.
14 penalties, and there was a situation. I think it was Deron Bland who took a brutal late hit penalty that led to a San Francisco field goal, and of course. And of course, nothing more needs to be said about Brett Maher, the Cowboy kicker. I'm a former specialist. I used to be a long snapper, so I've always been.
He missed like 4 kicks the week before, right?
Oh yeah,
4 extra points. Excuse me.
He missed the 4 extra points against that, and I think this more or less shut down any argument that people had against drafting kickers, because the thing for San Francisco was you have a guy like Robbie Gould, one of the most reliable kickers in NFL history. Once you get to, the Dallas 35, that's field goal.
Line them up. Yeah.
You're guaranteed 3 points no matter what. But when Dallas, you have to drive to the 10 to get to feel like, if not closer, to get Brett Maher comfortable. So I feel that they had ample opportunities to win that game. Of course, everyone likes to point and laugh. The Cowboys are what I like to call they're the NFL's version of the Toronto Maple Leafs, and what I mean by that is that they are built on so much history. So many legends of the game have passed through Dallas and Toronto. They've changed the game as we know it. So many championships, so much history. They are on national TV on the time and make their respective leagues so much money. But when it comes to the thing that really matters, championships and getting past, a certain round, in Toronto's case, it's the first round, in the Cowboys' case, it's the divisional round, they falter every time. And not only do they lose in the most spectacular and oftentimes hilarious fashion. So Cowboys have turned themselves, unfortunately. They call themselves America's team, but they might as well be Canada's with the way they've emulated this.
Do you know, and I always tell Rafique, do you know why they called America's team?
Yes, I do, because they were an NFL Films documentary, as a matter of fact.
There we go. And the guy proclaimed them that, and then all of a sudden it's have stuck ever since. And this is the Roger Staubach days, where Roger Staubach was absolutely phenomenal. But one thing they forget about those teams, even though they mustered out 2 championships then, the Cowboys were getting their butt kicked by the Pittsburgh Steelers every time they were going to the Super Bowls or other teams during those times. Now, I mean, come on, the Steel Curtain. I mean, look at Terry Bradshaw and those guys in the defense. They were absolutely phenomenal. I mean, it's so big. But thank God that Jerry Jones, Jimmy Johnson, who was there, and those guys drafted very well and did well in the 90s. Because let's be very honest. And just like you said with them too, and that's what I tell my guys, that's my problem with the Cowboys. And I don't have a problem with the Cowboys as a team. It's the fan base, that the energy that they've displayed on top of that. They think every year they're supposed to be 17-0 and they're going to win the Super Bowl. That's not realistic. It is the years the Giants won those Super Bowls, I would be lying on the cross to tell you that I thought they were going to win from the beginning of the year. You need a lot of things to go your way for things to work out that way. And their pompousness with you couldn't tell. I remember one year Jerry Jones and them played the Giants the first time around in 2008, and he already pre-ordered tickets for the NFC Championship game, already foreshadowing that they were going to beat the Giants, which I'm pretty sure he had to get his money back. He's the owner anyway. But they just have to stop that. You don't get a legacy card for what you did 400 years ago. It's all about right now. And as much as they criticize me as a Giants fan, we'll be kicking your butt, but I said, but the Giants found a way to have a parade 2 times in a little bit of time there. You guys have been proclaiming all this stuff since 1996, and you haven't got back to a championship game. There are some lesser teams in the NFC who have even went once during that time, and they still are chasing that barometer. So there's a lot of talent on that team. I think what you said is key. They need to work on some discipline. I don't know how much that's going to change because I'm not big on Mike McCarthy. I don't think Mike McCarthy's a good coach. That's just me. I think he's a puppet. I think that he's a good friend with Jerry Jones, and Jerry Jones likes anybody who's a yes man who he can string along and do and will say and do whatever he wants. So he might just stay just because of that. But there's other things that they need to work on in regards to just being smart and disciplined and doing certain things at the end of the game and so on and so forth. And I feel bad for Dak. He's done it to himself. And here goes the other thing I want to say, that there's certain franchises that the responsibility is just different. Like playing for any New York team in general is a different responsibility. Playing here and playing in Milwaukee, Wisconsin is 2 different things. This is New York. If you even have 2 turnovers, you will be on the back cover of the Daily News immediately, and there'll be 5,000 questions about it. Right, guys? Going back, this media, this market is different. When you got that star on your helmet and you playing for the Dallas Cowboys, the barometer is a whole different barometer. Being the starting pitcher for the New York Yankees on that mound is a lot more different than the Texas Rangers. So the responsibility that comes with it, and the fact that they've never won since that long time, is why the whole world will get on them. Stephen A. Smith don't dislike the Cowboys. And he actually is good with Jerry Jones. He don't like the fans. and
I think he's buddy. He's buddy with Jones. I think that's a very. It's like I said. If Prescott and Romo played anywhere else, they would be, the ultimate success stories. Like if the example I bring up all the time. And look, full disclosure, I kind of gave up my fan card once I started professionally writing. But I grew up a Cowboy fan. I grew up a Cowboy fan with my father.